So I have heard you get frozen septic tanks in Minnesota. Is that true in your area, or is it only north of you?
Yes, we do have septics that freeze. Now, it's when we don't have snow that frost goes down deeper and can freeze septic systems. There are people whose jobs it is to come out and kind of climb into your septic system with a torch or a heating element, thaw them out that way. And so the park board gets X amount of dollars for every building permit that's pulled that way.
That's
You should have that.
crazy. I'm flabbergasted that there's a park dedication fee. I'm Leigh Brown. This is Real Talk with Leigh Brown. Today, I'm bringing you Todd Urbanski. He is a fantastic realtor, former city council member, planning and zoning guy in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And of course, with Minnesota being in the news, I thought it might be interesting to have a chat about what's happening in and around real estate. So enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you on the other side. We should probably tell the world, they've already guessed you're in Minnesota, they've guessed you're in the Twin Cities. Go ahead and tell them who you are, what town and area you're located in. Give them a tiny thumbnail of Todd.
Sure. Hi, I'm Todd Urbanski with Edina Realty out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Brainerd. Been in the business now for 26 years. I've known Leigh Brown for probably 10, 15 years. We've done a lot of work together on a national level. I've been to her classes. She's an excellent instructor, great realtor, and a good friend. So when I was asked to come on this podcast, I absolutely said yes and kind of go from there.
Well, I'm really grateful that you did. And I'm also grateful for the amount of time you spend trying to make other people better, whether it's through elected office or through volunteerism or the way you lead your family. I mean, it's all really good stuff. So I felt like you'd be the perfect one to share with the audience with all of the talk about Minneapolis and all the talk about Minnesota. I, of course, being a real estate nerd just like you, I'm curious about what's happening in and around real estate when you see all the upheaval. And I know that your population has changed over the last 30 years with the influx of people from Somalia. Has that had an impact on values? Has the fraud that's been talked about, is that any way related to real estate? Because I'm curious, because I feel that with the spotlight on Minneapolis, I've gotten fairly skeptical of news all over the place because I know they're really good at taking their cameras and poking them at the tiny piece of what's going on to tell whichever narrative they plan to support. And so I have we'll just call it a healthy level of skepticism. So tell us a little bit about what you've seen happen with the real estate markets with the change of the demographics in and around your cities.
Yeah, well, let me start with, so Minneapolis, St. Paul is, I believe, the 13th largest metro across the country.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's what I believe that's accurate. And we've held, if we look at going back over 40, 45 years of history, we average about 5% appreciation a year. We don't have the huge upswings or the huge downswings, with the exception of the recession where everybody pretty much saw a downswing. We recovered from that fully, and we're continuing to climb. Over this last year, I made some notes here. I think our average sales price is up almost 3.7%. Our median sales price is up about 2.6%. So we're kind of running with inflation that way. Pretty flat, but not necessarily the big spike up or the big spike down. And a lot of that is really based off of the diversity that we do have in the Twin Cities here. Years ago, this would be going back to the 1970s. We had a huge influx of Hmong people that came into St. Paul. So St. Paul is, I believe, the number one destination for people that were kind of fleeing at that point and resettling in the United States. St. Paul became home to a huge population of Hmong people. Somalians came in probably started coming here in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And so I haven't been selling houses since the 1970s. I've only been doing it since 1999. But when I look at what's going on in our marketplace, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm probably sure it happens down in the Charlotte area too, is that these populations tend to kind of stick together. You have your Hmong communities, your Somalian communities, your Irish communities, your Italian communities, your Polish communities. They all kind of stick together. And what we've seen, I haven't really seen, even with the civil unrest that we had here in 2020 to the problems that we're having here today, I'm not seeing a dip in real estate prices. Okay. I'm not seeing a lack of excitement around real estate yet. particular neighborhoods are going to be a little bit tougher to get into and out of right now. You're talking small areas that way, that are pretty much gaining all the press out there as well. Like you kind of mentioned, kind of seeing it through the lens of somebody's camera, and it's generally probably the same 5 or 6 small intersections within the Twin Cities right now.
So would you say that it's fair to assess that the residents of those areas at this point are slightly numb to it and they're like another whatever, and then they just find a way around it and they just deal with it?
Yeah, I don't want to put words into the mouths of those people, because there are some people that are definitely affected by this. And there are other people that I think numb is probably a pretty good word. They're just kind of used to it. There are certain people that are saying, that's it, I'm done, I'm getting out of this.
Mhm.
But then you have other people that are saying, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to get into an area that we've always wanted to be in. And granted, it might be considered a little blighted right now, but that's going to pop back. So Minneapolis, we're home to 17 Fortune 500 companies. We're very diverse from both a population standpoint to a industry standpoint to a professional standpoint. So we've always kind of bounced back from a lot of different social issues that we've had over the years, over the decades, really.
So do you think there's more drama in the Twin Cities than there is in other cities, or is it just that y'all seem to attract the spotlight for some reason? Because when I lived in Des Moines, there's nothing exciting that happens in Iowa, and I think everybody in Iowa knows that. So when I lived in Des Moines, I would drive to Minneapolis to go check out Minnesota, just like I go to South Dakota and Nebraska and Missouri and Wisconsin, because you need something to do. And it was very similar to Des Moines as far as kind of relaxed, nice people, didn't really meddle in your life. They're just kind of doing their thing and nothing exciting about it. I mean, no offense, but Minneapolis was just not exciting or fun. I just find it to be interesting that y'all are in the news all the freaking time, and it just seems different.
We used to be flyover land, and I'd kind of like to have our reputation go back to that, at least for a couple of years here. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. And Minnesota always ranks like in the top 2, 3 states for giving, for charitable reasons. So Minnesotans are you've probably heard the term Minnesota nice. So, and it kind of goes back to like the planning commission meeting. They only show up for the things that are going to affect them, and then they leave, right? So we're very nice, we're very giving, and sometimes too giving. The phrase, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man a fish, he'll eat for a lifetime, right? In Minnesota, we've kind of started giving away too many fish sometimes.
Mhm.
And when you do that, eventually, it's like anything else. There's certain people that will take advantage of those
Of
situations.
course, always.
Yep, happens all the time. And there are certain people that need those, right? But I think we've kind of crossed the line of giving too much, and it's affecting the people that are ultimately paying for the fish. And it's causing some tensions in quite a bit of it right now.
So, what do you think is the possible outcome to the real estate market if the actual confirmed fraud, because I also have to assume that not everything being declared fraudulent is fraudulent, and some of them absolutely are, because you can't broad brush anything. But assume that the $9 billion they're now saying has been taken out of the tax buckets from taxpayers. Say they recover half of it and prosecute people. I'm wildly optimistic here. Do you think that's going to have an impact on the real estate market? Will that take renters out of the market? Is the Somali community primarily homeowners or renters? I mean, what kind of projections are you looking at in the real estate side? And again, there's a numbers effect here that I think is often left out of the conversation because people get so wildly emotional about it. And I get it, because fraud's awful. And as a taxpayer, I would like to go on taxpayer strike right now because my dollars are being so wasted. But at the same time, I've got to be a pragmatist and say, all right, is this going to drive prices down? How do I advise my sellers knowing that X could happen? How do I advise my investors knowing that Y could happen? There's all these what ifs.
To start with, I'm an optimist, always have been. How is this all going to play out specifically for the homeowners and the values of their homes, and for people that are investing in real estate in the state of Minnesota? If we go back 3-4 years, the government has been investigating different fraud cases for 3 or 4 years now. So this isn't all of a something new that popped up over the last 3 or 4 months. This has been ongoing. And then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and more fraud is found and more fraud is found. And a lot of those people have been prosecuted already. A lot of them are in jail already, have recovered, millions and millions of dollars that they put back into tax base. That said, because when I look at our historically here, and I go back to, 2020 and George Floyd and the unrest that we had then when, the pictures were all of Minneapolis burning and that type of stuff. It didn't really have a massive effect on our real estate market.
Really?
Now, granted, we also, all of a sudden interest rates dropped down to 3%. So there were some incentives there to suddenly buy. But Minneapolis, St. Paul is two large cities, but it's really a bunch of neighborhoods. And each neighborhood has kind of its own character that way. There are literally, between some what you would consider good neighborhoods and some not so good neighborhoods, it's a matter of a block or two. And so people, I think, still are attracted to those areas, even though there might have been some violence or some unrest in the near past or yesterday even, right? It's still an opportunity to get into something when somebody wants to get out of something. And so it'll be an interesting, look, if I could look into my crystal ball and say, okay, 5 years back, here's what this all did to our market. I would say that we're not gonna see a lot of changes here. Downtown Minneapolis, I'd say would be the biggest change that we're seeing right now with the condo market down there. But I think that mirrors a lot of major cities right now with people just kind of getting out of the heart of the city and a lot of condos overbuilt and high taxes and fees. So it's hard to run a restaurant in downtown Minneapolis right now. It's hard to run a
get a
grocery
loan on a condo either because the loan rules changed with the collapse of that building in Miami. And so
Right.
there's cascading effects from their market to your market, from your market to the suburbs of the area. And I think that's not often talked about in the real estate world, Todd. We should probably be talking about those impacts more too.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's a cost factor, right?
Right.
New construction, Minnesota, we have some of the highest building standards in the country. As an example, on our windows, any window that's above the main floor, so second story, third story, if it's above, I think 8 feet or so, they have to put a little anti-lock device on the window so that it can only open about 4 inches.
What?
So that nobody can fall through a screen that way.
So like a hotel window?
Kind of like a hotel window. Yeah. Now you can clip those little buttons and then open the window the whole way. So they're, small little buttons that go inside your window. But for every house that's built, then that adds over $1,000 in cost. So it's just, that's one thing, right? And I'll multiply that by 10, 20 other little things and, park dedication fees, street light fees, water access fees.
Did you say a park dedication fee? What is a park dedication fee? Because that sounds like a junk municipal fee.
So in our state, it's pretty common that whenever a neighborhood goes in, there's money that is allocated to each lot that goes towards either an existing park or a new park. And so the park board gets X amount of dollars for every building permit that's pulled that way.
That's
You don't have that?
No. I mean, well, in our area, the Parks and Rec tends to be funded by bond initiatives. And that's how we got our really long greenway that's going to go multiple counties. But we have some parks, but we have so much nice green area anyway. Maybe that's why the parks aren't a huge conversation like this. But I'm flabbergasted that there's a park dedication fee. But it does expose the reality that the people who fuss about affordability of housing have zero idea that the bulk of the cost overruns right now are ticky-tacky things like that, impact fees, tree fees, park fees, that make it so expensive to build. The builders can't afford to build something cheaper because the municipality's eaten up this amount. What's the last national number I saw was $47,000 is the national average for the amount. The cost of a new build right now, $47,000 is just permits and fees.
Yeah, before they buy a 2x4 or stick a shovel in the ground.
But it'd be much higher in Minnesota. I wonder what your number is. Probably should ask your state lobbyist that. Todd.
Every city's a little bit different that way. But
I wonder if Josh would know. We should tell him to look it up. It'd be a good process for him to look up for the Minnesota Realtors.
Might be scary. I did a study on that once, and the number I came up with was $78,000. Yeah. Now, that's not metro-wide. That was one city.
But the public needs to understand that because they yell at developers, they yell at builders, and they yell at us, the realtors. without understanding that the local elected officials and the local bureaucrats are causing the biggest cost increase. And those are also the elections people are least likely to pay attention to.
So the development I live in, city I live in, whenever a new development goes in, they have to have sidewalks in front of every house, right? So that's a fee for the developer as well, right?
Mhm.
Now, when the street goes in, so they can't start building houses on these streets until they at least have one level or one layer of blacktop down,
Okay.
and they have to put the sidewalks in right away. So they have empty lots with sidewalks running through there. Now, what happens when you build the house, right?
The
Heavy
runners get
equipment.
mad because runners love those sidewalks, and then when you build the house, you're putting framing things across our sidewalks, and we take ownership of new construction.
Oh, absolutely. There's that kind of issue. And in Minnesota, we have things called snow and ice.
Yeah,
Who
frozen second
maintains
comes
those in the
too.
wintertime? And then they're running heavy equipment over them, so they're constantly breaking them. So before the city gives, final approval or the final sign off on the development after everything's built, they go through there with a can of spray paint and put a big white X on each square of the sidewalk that needs to be replaced, which is a developer's cost also. There's a lot of ways to save money, and on the flip side of that, I can understand it, because if you don't put them in right away, then people don't want to put them in after the fact, because now they've got their sprinkler systems in, they got their yards in, they're used to what they're used to type thing. And then we have more people at our planning commission meetings, at least until that topic is covered.
Then I'm thinking about the cost of a yard of concrete right now because it keeps escalating. Concrete's getting so high. If it
Sure.
takes you 3 years to do a build out on a neighborhood and you have to do it twice in
Yeah.
addition to your finish coat on the road, I mean,
Yeah. And, same thing with the curb and gutter too. They go through and paint everything. So, as a developer has to figure an X percentage for concrete repairs into the future then.
so I have
Callbacks.
heard you get frozen septic tanks in Minnesota. Is that true in your area or is it only north of you?
So I'm working on kind of transferring some. We have a cabin up. If you live in Minnesota, you either have to own a cabin, know somebody that owns a cabin, or at least have the dream of owning a cabin someday. We were lucky enough to get a small cabin on the Mississippi River about 2012. We bought it.
Oh, so that's north of
And
Decorah then. You're over there not far from Decorah, Iowa, aren't you?
well, we're up by Brainerd.
The way on up the Mississippi.
Yeah, way on up the Mississippi.
That's a pretty area.
We're about 120 miles from the headwaters of the Mississippi by road. Probably 300 river miles, but yeah, it's pretty cool. But anyways, so up in that area there, yes, we do have septics that freeze. Now, this year shouldn't be a major issue up there because we had snow early. So snow actually insulates your septic system. It's when we don't have snow that frost goes down deeper and can freeze septic systems quite a bit. So they sell septic blankets up here. Yeah, all sorts of.
Is that a permanent installation or is it like the sheets I put on my azaleas when I get a late frost?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Only a little thicker. Yeah. And some people will just put, hay bales down. They'll open up hay bales and spread it across their septic system, and that kind of keeps it. Some people will just turn the water on a little bit. So running water doesn't necessarily freeze, or it's harder to freeze depending upon the temperature. So there's a bunch of different workarounds on that.
But what do you do if your septic tank does freeze? What do you do? Go stay with a friend, or I can't get my head around it, to be honest.
There are people whose jobs it is to come out and kind of climb into your septic system with a torch or a heating element, thaw them out that way.
What?
Yeah.
Do you have bigger lids on your septics than we do here?
Well, you can get into a clean out type thing. You're not necessarily crawling down into the box itself.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, but we should clarify on that.
I'm feeling like Mike Rowe needs to watch this episode because I think we have a dirty job for him to put on his TV program.
Mike Rowe might have done an episode on that already.
The guy who has to unfreeze the septic tank. I'm going to have to go look on the internet. ChatGPT can tell us if that episode exists.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm kind of stuck on this regulatory side for a minute because I really feel like this is where any real estate related person who watches my show could be doing better homework in their own community. As somebody who's served on city council and serves on planning and zoning, what is the best way for an average citizen constituent to find out what's being proposed, what the regulations are? How do they figure out what the battles are that could be fought before they land in front of a meeting full of angry people who yell at the volunteers?
It's pretty easy these days. First off, if I was king, I would require everybody to either be in a city council, be on some sort of committee, be on some sort of commission for at least 2 years in your community, just so you understand how everything works.
You can't be king because there's certain people in my community who have no business serving in that role, so you are hereby blocked from being king.
That's okay. I'm okay with that. My point is people need to understand better how things operate, right? It's not always black and white. There's a lot of grays in between there. 20, 30 years ago when I was on the city council, the only way to really learn what was going on in your community was to go to a meeting or read the paper, and the papers weren't that accurate with what was going on. And then still aren't, right? Nowadays, though, you can hop on to pretty much the website and look at any agenda that you want, any minutes that you want. Most communities all have that there. So when I was training new realtors, I'd always tell them to go to a city council meeting, so at least you understand how they operate, how they function, get to know what the hot button topics are, start to build a relationship with the council members, start to build a better relationship with the city staff. Go to a planning commission meeting, go to a park board meeting, get to learn how those things work. And then once a month, just spend a half hour, 45 minutes kind of going over the agendas and minutes that way so that you're aware of what's going on, and especially in your backyard.
I think that is sound advice. So we'll just make an amendment to your kingly proclamation there that for 2 years they have to read minutes and show up at meetings instead of serving in the role. How about that?
It's your show. It's your show.
I mean, it would change organized real estate, I think, if real estate professionals invested that kind of time understanding it, because often when things do change, we get caught flat-footed talking to a seller who says, nobody told me they were going to develop this field over here. Well, you ignored the meetings, but if the realtor knows, they're supposed to tell, but there should be a curiosity that would help us see our way both sides of every conversation, so we can, back to where we started, maybe we could find the commonality if we did the tiniest bit of research where we live, much less looking at what we see online and getting very riled up about something that happens in another place. Maybe we should really take those lessons and apply it to where we live.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. At the end of the day, it's all about becoming more involved, right? And understanding what's going on in your community, getting to know your neighbors. I sit on our HOA for our neighborhood here too. And it's interesting the emails that we get for people that, are afraid to go talk to their neighbor. They'd rather take it to the HOA board than just have a discussion with a neighbor.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it could go back to social media again, that everybody is so afraid of offending somebody that they don't want to say anything. You can kind of work under the cloak of darkness by going through back channels. We've created so many different ways to fix something that we forgot about the first way, which is just, talk to somebody. I don't know if that's an accurate statement, but it just kind of came. I'm going to write that one down, actually.
I think you're onto something there, because it falls into thought that I've had over and over, because you've won your elections. I'm a 100% loser. I've lost all 3 times I've won, batting 1,000. And so you realize too, when you run for office.
Didn't Lincoln lose like 16 times though?
Yes, but he was also very tall. But when you look at people who run for office, there's often this complaint amongst voters of they have to choose the lesser of two evils. Why don't good people run? And then they simultaneously go to social media and type like this and say the worst horrible things about somebody they've never met. And then they wonder why you don't have good people running. Well, maybe it's because they're getting completely slammed all the time. And you can apply that to the HOA, because there's it's a whole meme factory about HOAs being run by a bunch of Karens, and they're horrible and they're awful. And you realize, well, they get yelled at nonstop too. So maybe you're not attracting the people who are really thoughtful and carefully considering all outcomes, because you yell at them all the time. So maybe if all of us just slowed the anger down and the impatience a little bit, we could attract better elected officials and better HOAs. And if we slowed it down a little bit, we could actually talk to our neighbors, because I love my neighbors. And we have, my street has a text thread, like the 8 families on our street. We have a text thread of, there's a car over here. Does anybody know them? Or does anybody have a wood splitter? And we have this amazing communication, and we don't even talk about things like politics and stuff that's on
Mhm.
Facebook. We just care for each other. It's wild and crazy, I know.
That sounds like a great neighborhood to live in. How many people have moved out of your neighborhood, say, over the last 5 or 10 years?
Only one, and he moved out on a, sheep because he died, and that's it. But we were the latest ones to move onto the street 6 years ago, and next door neighbors had been in their house for 46 years, and the people across the street were 47 years. So now both of them are over 50 years, and they are the joy of my life, and I will do anything to take care of them and keep them in their houses because I love them so much. But,
Amazing how it all comes back to your neighborhood and your home, it doesn't?
yes. You were mentioning Minneapolis being less Twin Cities and more the collection of tiny neighborhoods, and it's the same thing of in real estate, that's always been the key to a great realtor. You understand that this community has a personality, and so does this community, and so does this community. And you might not like all three of them, and that's cool because we want you to figure out the pocket where you belong. And that's why the numbers are different too, because there's different characteristics for each area. And that used to be a good thing. So maybe we got to go back to that too, to say it's okay for areas not to be homogenous.
Yeah. I mean, if it was all the same, it would be pretty boring that way.
And then
right?
you're Iowa. Just kidding, Iowa. But you're not exciting.
I have this belief of if you're not happy in your home, you're not happy in life. You spend how many hours a day in your home, right? And if you look at something or the view out your back window, as I'm looking out my back window right now, if you're not happy with that view or you're not happy with the layout, it's too small, it's too big, it's too cold, there's not enough light, whatever it is, you subliminally focus on those things throughout the day. And I think it just kind of drags you down. So I spend a lot of time with buyers when we're talking about what's the perfect house for them so that we can kind of you're never going to find the perfect house, right? But if we can get that 85%, 80 to 85% where they're going to like it, then, the house becomes more important, followed by the community then. And then it's followed by what's the price on this thing, right? So that's what's so beautiful about the business that we're in is we truly get to make a difference in the happiness of people, not just in their lives, but I've got several clients now that have been in their homes for over 20 years. And they have no issue. They just don't want to move, which is not necessarily good for me, but I think it shows that we did it right the first time then.
And it is good for you because they're voters, and then you can run for office again, and they're there.
No, we're good there. We're good. I did my 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, whatever years it was.
That's a lot. So on behalf of your whole community, thank you for being willing to serve.
Oh, thank you.
Well, if anybody wants to reach out to you to talk about real estate in your neck of the woods or to find out about the educational offerings that you have or to ask your advice on planning and zoning, what are the ways that they can best reach you and ask you all their questions?
You can Google me, Todd Urbanski, Urbanski, Todd with 2 Ds, or Todd Urbanski at edinarealty.com. or my phone number 612-865-3644. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
And as usual, everybody, all of Todd's contact information is right over in the show notes for this episode, so you can click to contact and please reach out to him if you're looking for a class or a speaker for your area. You can see that you're going to get a really thoughtful and insightful presentation. And if you need to buy or sell real estate in and around the Twin Cities, maybe call somebody who's thoughtful enough to understand that everything's not always as it seems. So, Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you being willing.
Thank you, Leigh. I appreciate being here.
All right, guys, say something nice in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Well, friends, if that episode made you laugh, think, or shout, "Oh, gosh, dang," go ahead and smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on that little tiny bell so you don't miss the next round of Real Talk with Leigh Brown.